Okay, so there we go. We're looking very, very nicely. You can probably see on the close-ups, we've got no silvering in these. So what we do, pop around with a knife, give it a bit of a scratch, especially run along the panel lines, give it a little bit more. Just be careful how you put it on, because you don't want to end up flicking up the decals and everything else. But there we go. They're all on there now, all looking very nice. So what we've also done is put the decals, these green ones, on the inside of the canopy frame. So if we just bring the camera in a minute, you can see these a little bit better. So what's going to happen is they are going to fit on just like this, and it's quite a loose fit on here. But what we've got is the green ones showing through. Put it on the hand, you can probably see it on the side there, that come in, and then obviously from here they run down. Now what I actually did, give them exactly the same way it's done these, but I want to keep it nice and clear. So one way we're going to do that is just dip it in a little bit of fuchsia. Now this is just your normal fuchsia that you'd have. Okay, we've got this one as we've spoken about before. You've got the new type as well, works equally as well, just takes a bit longer to dry. Okay, so what we're going to do, I've got here a glass jar because it's got a bigger neck on it and it's just easier to work with. Got our little paper, so we're going to need a clamp to grab this little guy. Okay, we're going to grab it right at the back. We're just going to come in right the way to the bottom, slowly pull it up. Okay, knock off the little drips. Okay, run it round, okay, and then we're going to go back in again, exactly the same way, knocking off all the excess we can find, okay, and then looking like there's no big bubbles. If you've got any giant bubbles on the top, maybe time to get rid of those, as you can see. And what it'll do, it'll just make it look a lot clearer. It'll give it more of a crystal clear effect. Now what you don't want to do is have big dust bubbles and all things like this over this, so we'd suggest going and putting it somewhere nice and quiet, and if you can, cover it over with something, perhaps an old tub or something. I say just looking around, I haven't actually got it in, I'll go and find something, but an upturned dish, something like that, as long as the air can circulate, and go and give it roughly about 12 hours to totally go off. And by the time we come back to finishing this, it will all be dry and we can place it on. So that's that one done. You can do exactly the same with the little front dome as well. So we're just going to hold the front part just exactly the same, in we go, dip it down. If you've got any giant bubbles, just pop it back in. Okay, when you're happy, take it over to the tissue. Exactly the same thing with that. So we'll let them dry off naturally. Now at the same time, because we're getting quite close to finishing this one up, what we've done as well, we've already pre-painted the green and the red for the light, so check your references to make sure you get around the right way, and you can do those. So what I've done, parts, I think it's 4 and 6 I've done as green, and then 3 and 5 are the red for the port side for the navigation, but they're going to go on after we finish. So one of the things we can get on with now is we want to give this some weathering. So there's two things we can do here, okay? We can either give this a gloss coat and just give it a straightforward pin wash, and away we go, and we keep it quite nice, or we can try and tone this down and give it a bit more of a grubby look. For that, I'm going to give it a coat of flat. So he says just moving those clear glass parts completely out of the way and sticking them in a cupboard, because I don't want to get them covered. Okay, now when you're shooting flat on something like this, what you can do is, like I've done here, I've added the spinners, the props, I've got the doors down here because I'm going to be doing washes, I don't want to get around, but anything you can pop on it at the moment will just help it out and keep it all in one thing. So what we're going to do, we've got here some normal flat. Now this particular one is the Valero flat. Okay, so what we're going to do, pouring it neat into our colour cup. Now we're turning up our air pressure to around about 30 psi, and normally I would have the table covered and all the rest of it, but just to show you guys, we do it without, okay? And all we're going to do, very lightly, just going to put a flat coat right the way over the entire model. Now what we've done, we've made sure that there's no silvering on the decals and things like that, and taken care of them first, okay? Once you've made one small pass over it, cut to air and dry it off. And really see how it looks. And one pass there, I've killed 99% of that flat off, the gloss off. But we're just going to do another quick pass. Now if you put this stuff on quite heavily, what happens is it goes quite satiny. Okay, we're doing this quite light, and hopefully it'll be okay. Okay, carefully grab the side. Okay, we're just going to come in from the side. Okay, turning around. Oh, we lost the gear, which isn't good. Okay. Those spinners, dole them down. Okay, and exactly the same for the underside. Should give us a nice flat. And what we can do in that cockpit area as well, just to keep it nice and flat. Okay, and there's that one done now. So in a moment we'll stick that back in. But you can see it's completely knocked off any shine this model had now, which is great, because what we can do now, let that totally dry off, and when we come back with the wash in a minute, it'll give us something to really grip onto and give us a more weathered look. So what we're going to do now, we're going to clean out our airbrush, get everything nicely cleared away, and we can get on with giving this a wash. What we're going to do, we're just going to flip this one over. We're using the dark dirt wash on this one, okay, because it's going to be dark enough and it'll grime it all up. So we're just using circular motions and we're just rubbing it in. Because this is going onto flat, it's gripping very, very easy. If you find out it's obviously running off and not getting in the panel lines, then obviously what you can do is pop along with a little bit of washing up liquid, dishwater soap, pop it in, and it will help just break the surface tension. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're just going to whip everywhere around with the wash, just like this, and then we can let it dry off. Okay. Okay, so normal thing, just a damp cloth, getting this off. Now this is over flat, so it's going to give us a grimy, dirty look to it all. And because we're going over flat, sometimes you can have problems getting it off of various areas. So like you might be able to see down here, the type of effect I'm type of after is to give us that grimy, sort of worn look to the paintwork, which is I'm trying to get here. So obviously I don't want to take too much off. So what we're doing is using it quite dry and then giving it a rub. Obviously be careful of decals and things like that, because we don't want to end up ripping them off, but as you might be able to see in there, you get a sort of grubbiness to the paintwork, and that's the type of thing we're actually after. So by varying the amount of moisture that's on the cloth, it's quite damp, obviously it'll take a lot off. If it's not very damp, obviously you won't take much at all. So in a very wet cloth, we'll obviously get rid of lots and lots as you go. So just vary your amount, and then remember, if it gets a bit stiff, don't worry, just come along with a brush, medium brush, and give it a bit of a rub, and you'll probably get it all out, even on a flat surface like this. So normally you'd use a wash over a gloss or a satin finish, but if you're used to using it and you know the type of effect you want, and because I want this to be quite grimy and quite dirty, we're actually going to leave quite a lot of this on. Usual thing when you're finishing and you're thinking, right, that's quite how I want it, like up here, what we're going to do is just streaking it backwards in the direction of the airflow, and obviously you can get various weathering effects like it. A little bit too much there, but just go in the direction of the airflow. That way, if you have got any staining and things, it should pull all backwards and give you a nice effect to your paintwork. So I'll carry on getting this off. Okay, so there we go, all sorted out and done with this one. Now, wash on, wash off, so it's given us a sort of a nice grimy type of look to the actual model, which is the type of thing we're after. So two little things we need to do now. One is to tone down the decals. Now they are toned down a little bit, but not very much. Quickest and easiest way I find to do this, because it's been overcoated with a flat and bits like that, then it's quite easy to flatten them off a little bit more. So all we do, we take a very fine sanding stick. Now this is the one that's like a leather one, micro mesh, something like that, very fine, and all we do is go off of the area and then right over it. We wet it a bit to sort of get things going, and what it'll do, it'll drag. If we take a bit more of the coarser side, to be honest, picking up some junk, bits of overspray, things like that from elsewhere, and then going over the decal with it. And because it's got a flat coat, as you might be able to see, it's catching it on the surface. And when you rub it off and give it a rub round, it gives it a very nice worn, how quick close we can get his camera in, but you can see it gives it a very nice worn look to the actual one itself. And that's the type of thing we're after. So we just pop it over, give it a little bit more. We've got a tiny bit of silvering up here on the front, which is a real shame, but we might be able to get some more micro sol down there. Now I've already done it to this one a little bit over on this side as well, but just the same thing, coming along and giving a bit of a rub, and it'll just knock it back a little bit. And we've got to do the same with these. So I'm taking a bit more of the rougher one, and all it is doing is just getting caught. It's taking some of the paint from the blue around and just putting it over the top, and just give it a rub with your finger just to dull it in, and that will take care of that. Now if you wanted to take that type of thing to the extreme, I like to do it for dulling down decals. The other way you can do it, obviously, you can actually spray on a little bit of perhaps the blue, very, very thin, right the way over, just to knock it back a little bit. The other thing you can do now, because we've got the weathering on, which is giving us that grimy look, we can now go back just a little bit, and we can actually put on, bring back some of the blue. So by taking a sort of the medium type of side here on the three-way one, we can just give it a rub round and lighten up some of the areas just here and there by going over the model. Avoid obviously decals and things, but what we can do, we can just take off like we've done up here, just remove some of the paint so we're down to the primer. Some of the areas, just be very, don't push hard, because you just want to skip over the surface to reveal primer. And like the dots, you might be able to see those rivets on the close-up cam. We're just going to take the heads off of those so they show through. So they show through the paintwork of what would be the keep clear area as well. So that's worked quite well. On the extreme way of doing it, you can see it down here on the underside. What we've actually got down here is we've taken off around the light leading edges of the wings and things like that, but it's one of those areas where it's very easy to overdo it. If you overdo it, you have to end up repainting the model. But there we go, I've just done this bar, which is actually the main strengthening bars as they go through, and all the other bits, but I've gone around here, picked out center panels and things, just to really liven it all up. What will happen is, initially when you go over it, it'll come back very bright blue, and then as you go in a little bit further, it'll actually start to wear down towards where the primer is. You might be able to see on the close up there, we've got the blue shining through very nicely. And then if we keep going, we should get to a little bit more of the grittiness, so to speak. Okay, there we go, getting through, and it just gives it a bit of a change around. So if you're not happy about going around post shading and things like that, you could do it like this. But it's one of those things that it's very easy to overdo, so just be careful as you go round and do it all. Now the other thing as well, we said we've got to clean out these lights. So as I said, two ways of doing it. If you take a blade, very, very carefully scrape away your paint. Okay, then if you use the back of your blade, you can scrape it all off. Okay, and then if you go around with a cocktail stick, this isn't a particularly good one, but you can actually scrape, once you've got an edge, you can follow this through. And we can scrape all that out. Something like this, which is a handy technique, as I said, for using on acrylics, but it's a bit of a nightmare if you're doing it on with enamels, because it doesn't work as well. But it's just trying to get a place to start with. Then what you can do, you can come along where we've scraped it just a little bit, we can give it just a little sand. There we go. If we bring this top one in a bit closer, you can probably see that window all done. And what you can do is obviously give it a drop of gloss or something on there to totally clean that out and make it all nice. As I said, it's just a point of just trying to get in an edge in there to start with. As soon as you've got an edge in there, you can get in there and really, there we go, we can really get in there and open it up. So we can do those, take care of them. We can unmask this real one. as well. There we go, that's the rear one open. Now you might see that some of the decals will come away as I was weathering it. I'm not worried about it because in real life I've seen loads of photos with them that have done it as well, so I'd have only ended up trimming them away. But that's the actual bit to it. Then obviously we can go around, we can add the props, get those on. They can fit on quite nicely now. Okay, you can add the clear parts because I'm not going to overcoat this. If you wanted to, obviously you can come along, it's personal choice now to gloss this beforehand, but I'm not going to on this one. So we can put on the fronts like that. We're going to add a little bit of clear glue and we get these in, but I know for a fact these should stick in there just like that. So we're certainly looking the business now. So all we've got to do is add the glass work for the lights. So we've got here, just put this to one side a moment. We've got here the clear sprue, so we're just going to cut it straight down. And if we show you the port side, now port is always red, starboard is always green, which is the International Navigation Agreement. So you can tell when aircraft and boats are both the same, pass port to port, which means they're both on the red. So there we go, that's those nicely done, trimmed. So we just make sure we got all nicely trimmed in. Now as I said, went along and did these earlier, we spoke about it earlier, putting these in with a little bit of red, just there's a little hole in there, you can pop it in with the red and that takes care of that. Move that one out a bit. So then you have your wingtip just in like this, we bring the camera in. Okay, and then all we're going to do is take a little bit of gator glue. Okay, tiny little bit, and all we're going to do is just run it both sides. Quite generous amount, don't worry about it, because as I say, we can clean it out afterwards. Okay, then obviously you can just come along and remembering which is your right and left, and obviously I'm just about to make a huge mistake there and do the wrong one. We want to do the port side, which is this side. A bit more glue. There we go. As I say, better to have too much than too little at this point. Okay, so we're going to take our little light, okay, and we're going to squish him in. Okay, don't worry about gluey prints and all of that, we'll get them off in a second. So we're just going to squish them in like that. Cotton bud, my old favourite for this. And there we go, that's that one on. Easily done, pretty straightforward. We're going to do the same for the other side, then we can add all the little bits and pieces all ready for the final reveal. Okay, and there we go, we're all just finished off. All we've done then is we've just put the two little radiator covers on the front. Still got to fix the door on, but to tell you the truth, it's just a little bit wet at the moment, so I didn't want to put that on because I wanted to show you some of the bits we've done. Probably see on the close-up the canopy looks really, really nice, so we've got this green areas showing through. Now I've done mine as a loose fit, purely because I wanted to be able to show the cockpit off and some of that nice detail that's going in there and everything else like that. So it's one way to have a loose fit. It's a nice snug fit, it's not too much of a problem, so if you wanted to glue it down at any point you could do. Just lining up the back bit is the tricky bit and getting them in. Once you're in, it's really, really nice, and there we go, let's pop that on. There it is, lovely build, very, very straightforward. As I said at the beginning of when we started this one, that I haven't built this kit in many, many years now, and it's been great to come back and do it because obviously my skills have totally changed, and I learn every single day. I learn something new, and I like to take forward what I've learned on this particular one and move forward. The one thing I learned on this one was doing the seams down in here to get a nice one across with the body so it all fits very nicely to the wings in there. Just learnt a little new technique with that about getting in there and sanding and things, so personally from me I learnt a little bit there. Also popping around with the actual sanding stick and just lightening up and knocking back some of the weathering, because obviously we did this one over a flat coat, so that causes a few little headaches and problems. Under here as well we did a few little things, we did some little touch-ups. wearing down the paintwork as we've done here and on the same and everywhere else. So it's all little things where I've learned something new, and especially when I look back, and it's a shame I still haven't got the original one I did, because I'd have loved to compare the two to see how it was. So that's what I'm really, the motto of this one is perhaps it's worth going back and doing one that you did many moons ago, and then you can compare it to your model that you've done now. I really hope you enjoyed the build, and if you have, join me again next time.